Imagine a world where science, philosophy, and logic were still in their infancy. A time when people struggled to understand the world around them, relying more on myth than reason. Now picture a single mind, not a king, not a warrior, but a thinker who shaped all of these fields and laid the foundation for what we now call knowledge. This is the story of Aristotle. Born over 2,300 years ago, Aristotle's ideas shaped the way we think about science, ethics, politics, and even storytelling. His work influenced everyone from medieval scholars to modern scientists, and even today his teachings are studied in classrooms around the world. But who was the man behind the philosophy? How did he rise from a student in Plato's academy to become the teacher of Alexander the Great and one of the most important figures in human history? Tonight, let's take a journey back in time, uncover the life of Aristotle, and explore the ideas that changed the world. Before we begin, if you love learning about history, myths, and the mysteries of mankind, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Bedtime Chronicles. Your support helps bring these stories to life, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Now get comfortable, relax, and let's begin our journey into the mind of Aristotle. Aristotle's journey begins in 384 BCE in the small coastal town of Stagira, Greece. It was a place far from the grandeur of Athens, but his life would soon take him to the heart of Greek philosophy. From an early age, Aristotle was immersed in a world of knowledge, thanks to his father Nicomachus, a respected physician who served as the personal doctor to the king of Macedon. This connection to Macedonian royalty would later shape Aristotle's future in ways he could never have imagined. Growing up in a household filled with discussions about medicine, anatomy, and the natural world, Aristotle developed a deep curiosity about how things worked. Unlike many of his peers who were content with accepting traditional explanations, young Aristotle was always asking why. Why does the body function the way it does? Why do the stars move across the sky? Why do people behave the way they do? His inquisitive nature was evident from the start. But tragedy struck early. His father passed away when Aristotle was still a boy, leaving him without his most significant intellectual influence. With no clear path forward in Stagira, Aristotle's guardians made a fateful decision. He would go to Athens, the cultural and intellectual heart of Greece, to study under the greatest philosopher of the time, Plato. At just 17 years old, Aristotle arrived at Plato's academy, the most prestigious center of learning in the Greek world. Imagine the scene. A young man, wide-eyed and eager, stepping into a place where some of the greatest minds debated the nature of reality, ethics, and politics. For the next 20 years, Aristotle would study, observe, and refine his thinking under Plato's guidance. At first, he was deeply influenced by Plato's teachings, particularly the idea of forms, the belief that the physical world is just a shadow of a higher, perfect reality. But even as a student, Aristotle wasn't one to accept ideas blindly. He began asking difficult questions, challenging some of Plato's most fundamental beliefs. Instead of seeing the world as a mere reflection of a higher truth, Aristotle believed that truth could be found in the physical world itself, through observation and experience. This difference in thinking would later cause a major rift between the two. While Plato saw Aristotle as his brightest student, he also saw him as a bit of a rebel, someone who would eventually break away from his teachings to forge his own path. But for now, Aristotle remained at the academy, absorbing knowledge like a sponge, refining his methods, and preparing for the journey that would make him one of history's greatest thinkers. Little did he know, his time at the academy would shape not just his future, but the future of science, philosophy, and human thought itself. For 20 years, Aristotle studied under Plato at the academy, absorbing the great philosopher's teachings and engaging in deep intellectual debates. Plato, a student of Socrates, had built his philosophy around the concept of forms. the idea that the world we see is merely an imperfect reflection of a higher, more perfect reality. In Plato's view, true knowledge could only be attained by understanding these forms, which existed beyond the physical world. To put it simply, Plato believed that reality wasn't what we could touch, see, or experience. It was something beyond our senses, something only the intellect could grasp. For example, a physical horse was just an imperfect version of the perfect horse that existed in the realm of forms. Everything in our world, he argued, was just a shadow of a greater, unchanging truth. At first, Aristotle followed this line of thinking, but as time passed, he began to question it. Unlike Plato, Aristotle believed that reality was not separate from the physical world. It was found within it. To truly understand something, he argued, we must study it, observe it, categorize it, and analyze its purpose and function. This was a radical shift from Plato's idealism. While Plato was focused on abstract ideas, Aristotle was grounded in empirical evidence, a belief that knowledge comes from experience and observation rather than just pure thought. Plato: truth exists beyond what we can see. Aristotle: truth is found in the world around us. Aristotle believed that everything has a purpose and function, a concept he called teleology. To understand an object, we must study its purpose, not just its form. This led him to develop one of his most famous ideas, the four causes, a framework for understanding why things exist and behave the way they do. Material cause: what something is made of, e.g., a statue is made of marble. Formal cause: the shape or blueprint of something, e.g., the design of the statue. Efficient cause: the process that made it, e.g., a sculptor carving the marble. Final cause: the purpose or goal of the object, e.g., to honor a god or a person. Unlike Plato, who was more interested in the why of existence, Aristotle was focused on the how. This approach laid the groundwork for modern science, encouraging observation, experimentation, and classification. The impact: laying the foundation for scientific thinking. This shift in thinking was revolutionary. Aristotle's emphasis on empirical observation led to advancements in multiple fields. Biology: he categorized plants and animals based on observable traits, making him one of history's first naturalists. Physics: though many of his theories were later corrected, his attempt to explain motion, change, and causality was foundational for later scientists. Logic: he developed the first formal system of logic, known as syllogism, a method of reasoning still studied today. His break from Plato wasn't just a personal disagreement, it was a shift in how humans approached knowledge. Instead of looking to a perfect world beyond our own, Aristotle taught that truth is found in the reality we experience. This idea would later influence great scientific minds, from Galen in medicine to Isaac Newton in physics. Though he deeply respected his teacher, Aristotle ultimately forged his own path, creating a new way of thinking that would guide philosophers and scientists for thousands of years. By the time Aristotle had fully developed his philosophical ideas and moved beyond Plato's academy, he had earned a reputation as one of the greatest minds in Greece. This reputation would lead him to an extraordinary opportunity, one that would change the course of history. In 343 BCE, Aristotle was summoned to the royal court of Macedon to take on a role unlike any he had before, the personal tutor to the young prince, Alexander, who would one day become Alexander the Great. At the time, Alexander was just 13 years old, brilliant, ambitious, and already showing signs of the leader he would become. His father, King Philip II of Macedon, wanted to ensure that his son received the finest education possible. Who better to provide that education than Aristotle, a man whose intellect rivaled the greatest thinkers of the time? For the next 3 years, Aristotle became Alexander's personal mentor, teaching him a broad range of subjects. The curriculum was as intense as it was diverse, covering philosophy, the importance of logic, reasoning, and critical thinking; ethics and politics, the nature of leadership, governance, and how to rule wisely; science and medicine, understanding the natural world and its laws; literature and the arts, the works of Homer, especially the Iliad, which Alexander would carry with him during his military campaigns; military strategy. Though Aristotle wasn't a soldier, he taught Alexander about history's greatest military leaders and tactics. Aristotle's teachings weren't just academic, they were deeply practical, tailored to mold Alexander into a king. He instilled in him the idea of rule through wisdom, teaching that a great leader must be both a warrior and a philosopher, a man of action but also of deep thought. One of the most fascinating questions in history is whether Aristotle's teachings directly influenced Alexander's empire building. While there's no direct evidence, several key ideas seem to have stayed with Alexander throughout his life: the idea of a unified world. Aristotle taught that the best rulers blend cultures rather than suppress them. Alexander, during his conquests, famously sought to merge Greek and Persian cultures rather than simply destroy those he conquered. Strategic thinking. Aristotle trained Alexander to think logically and adapt to new situations, which may have helped him outmaneuver opponents on the battlefield. Curiosity about the world. Unlike other conquerors, Alexander was deeply interested in science, geography, and philosophy, traits that may have come from his teacher. Alexander would later say that while he owed his life to his father, he owed his understanding of life to Aristotle. Even after Alexander set out on his military campaigns, his connection to Aristotle remained strong. Aristotle asked his former pupil to send back samples of exotic plants and animals from his conquests so he could study them. This led to one of the earliest recorded scientific expeditions in history, where new species were cataloged and studied. Imagine it. While Alexander was expanding his empire across Persia, Egypt, and India, Aristotle was back in Greece, analyzing the world through his students' conquests. Their teacher-student relationship had transformed into something much greater, a fusion of philosophy, science, and empire building. Despite their close bond, as Alexander grew more powerful, their relationship became strained. Aristotle had always supported Greek values and democracy, while Alexander began to adopt Persian customs and rule as an absolute monarch. It's believed that Aristotle disapproved of Alexander's growing thirst for power, leading to a silent rift between them. Aristotle left an indelible mark on numerous fields of knowledge. Logic. He developed the syllogism system, which became the foundation of analytical reasoning. Biology. He conducted detailed studies of over 500 species of animals, making him the world's first known biologist. Ethics. He introduced the concept of the golden mean, advocating for balance between extremes. Politics. He formulated the idea of a mixed government, which foreshadowed modern democratic systems. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, anti-Macedonian sentiments spread in Athens. Aristotle was accused of impiety, and to avoid persecution he fled the city, famously stating, "I will not allow Athens to sin twice against philosophy." In 322 BCE, at the age of 62, he passed away. His works were forgotten for centuries until medieval Islamic and European scholars rediscovered and translated them. Thinkers such as Avicenna, Thomas Aquinas, and Galileo Galilei studied his writings, which became the foundation for much of Western philosophy and science. Today, Aristotle remains one of the most influential thinkers in human history, and his works continue to inspire new generations of scholars. For over 2,300 years, Aristotle's ideas have shaped the way we think, govern, and understand the world. His contributions to philosophy, science, politics, and ethics laid the foundation for fields of study that are still relevant today. Whether it's the scientific method, the principles of logic, or his insights into morality and government, Aristotle's influence is woven into the fabric of our modern world. From the bustling streets of ancient Athens to the classrooms, laboratories, and governments of today, his legacy endures. His pursuit of knowledge, his belief in the power of observation and reason, and his endless curiosity continue to inspire philosophers, scientists, and leaders across generations. But now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of Aristotle's ideas do you think is still the most relevant today? Is it his logical reasoning, his political theories, or maybe his ethical philosophy? Let's discuss in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to hit that like button to support the channel. Subscribe to Bedtime Chronicles for more fascinating stories from the past. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay curious, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.